The morning sun was bright as it shined through the tall glass windows of Sterling Heights Bank. David Chen straightened his dark blue tie and smiled at his reflection in the polished marble wall. He had been working at this bank for 15 years. He started as a simple teller behind the counter, but now he was the senior teller. Everyone knew him. Everyone respected him. He liked it that way. David looked around the bank lobby with pride. Everything was perfect. The floors were so clean they reflected the light. The leather chairs in the waiting area looked expensive. The gold letters on the wall spelled out the bank's name. This was not just any bank. This was Sterling Heights, where rich people kept their money. David felt important working here. The other tellers arrived one by one. Sarah waved at him from her counter. Tom brought coffee for everyone. David checked his watch. It was almost 9 o'clock. Time to open the doors. He pressed the button that unlocked the front entrance. Another day at work had begun. The first customers walked in. David recognized most of them. There was Mrs. Henderson, an old lady who came every Tuesday to check her account. Behind her was Mr. Phillips, a businessman who owned 3 restaurants in town. David greeted them both with his best smile. These were good customers. They had lots of money in the bank. David had learned many things in his 15 years. He knew how to spot the right kind of customer. He could tell just by looking at someone if they were important or not. The way they dressed, the way they walked, the way they talked. It was easy for him now. He barely had to think about it. Around 10:30, a young woman walked through the front doors. David looked up from his computer screen. She was in her 20s, maybe 25 or 26. She was black with dark curly hair pulled back in a simple style. She wore black pants and a gray jacket. Nothing fancy. She carried an old leather bag over her shoulder. The bag looked worn out, like she had used it for years. David watched her walk across the lobby. She did not look like their usual customers. She looked nervous, maybe, or lost. David wondered what she wanted. Probably opening a basic account, he thought. Or maybe cashing a paycheck. Young people like her usually did not have much money. They came in for simple things. The young woman looked around the lobby. She seemed to be studying everything. The counters. The cameras in the corners. The offices in the back. David found this a bit odd, but he did not think much about it. She walked toward his counter with slow, careful steps. David put on his professional smile. It was the same smile he gave to everyone. Friendly, but not too friendly. "Good morning," he said. "How can I help you today?" His voice was polite, but there was something in his tone. Something that said he was already thinking about the next customer, someone more important. The young woman reached his counter and set her bag down. She looked directly at him. Her dark eyes were calm and clear. She did not smile back. "Good morning," she said. Her voice was steady and professional. David waited. Usually people told him right away what they needed. This woman just stood there looking at him. It made him uncomfortable. "Are you here to open an account?" he asked, trying to move things along. "Or do you need to cash a check?" The young woman did not answer his question. Instead, she reached into her leather bag. David wondered what she was looking for. She pulled out a black wallet and opened it slowly. David expected to see a credit card or maybe some cash, but what she pulled out made his heart skip a beat. It was a badge, a federal badge, shiny and official looking. Next to it was an ID card with her photo and name. David's eyes went wide. He read the words on the badge once, then twice, then a third time. He could not believe what he was seeing. The young woman placed the badge and ID card on the counter between them. "My name is Jasmine Rodriguez," she said. Her voice was calm but firm. "I am a lead auditor from the Federal Banking Commission. I am here to conduct a surprise audit of this branch. The audit starts right now." David felt like someone had punched him in the stomach. His mouth went dry. His hands started to shake. The smile fell from his face like a mask dropping to the floor. A federal auditor? Here, now? This could not be happening. Not today. Not to him. He stared at the badge, hoping it was fake. Hoping this was some kind of mistake. But the badge looked real. Very real. The seal of the Federal Banking Commission was right there. The woman's photo matched her face perfectly. Everything looked official and proper. I need to... David could not finish his sentence. His mind was racing. A surprise audit. Those words sent fear through every banker in the country. Surprise audits meant someone suspected problems. They came without warning. They looked at everything, every transaction, every decision, every mistake. Jasmine stood there patiently. She had seen this reaction before. The shock, the fear, the panic in their eyes. She waited for him to process what was happening. She had all day. She had all week if she needed it. David's hand reached for the phone on his desk. His fingers fumbled with the buttons. He needed to call his manager. Right now, Patricia Holloway needed to know about this immediately. This was way above his level, way above his pay grade. Ms. Holloway? David's voice cracked when she answered. We have a situation at the front desk. A federal auditor is here. She says she is doing a surprise audit. Can you please come out here right away? He listened to her response, then hung up the phone. Jasmine watched all of this with a neutral expression. She picked up her badge and ID and put them back in her bag. Then she pulled out a thick folder full of papers, official documents, legal forms, lists of things she would need to see. Other tellers had noticed something was wrong. Sarah kept glancing over from her counter. Tom had stopped helping his customer and was staring. Even the customers in line sensed the tension. Something important was happening. David stood frozen behind his counter. Just 5 minutes ago, everything had been normal. He was in control. He knew his place in this bank. He knew how things worked. But now in just a few seconds, everything had changed. This young woman he had dismissed so quickly held all the power now. She could look at anything. She could ask any questions. She could find any mistakes. And David knew deep in his heart that there were mistakes to find. Lots of them. His stomach twisted into knots. The bright morning sun that had seemed so pleasant before now felt too hot. The perfect lobby suddenly felt like a trap. And the young black woman standing in front of him, the one he had judged so quickly, was about to turn his whole world upside down. Patricia Holloway's office door swung open. She walked out with quick, sharp steps. Her high heels clicked loudly on the marble floor. She was a tall woman in her 50s with short blonde hair and glasses. She wore a dark suit that looked expensive. Her face showed concern, but she was trying to hide it behind a professional smile. Patricia had been the branch manager for 8 years. She ran a tight ship, as people like to say. Nothing happened in this bank without her knowing about it. Or so she thought. A surprise audit was her worst nightmare. It meant someone in Washington thought there were problems here. Big problems. She walked up to the counter where David stood looking pale and nervous. Next to him was the young woman with the federal badge. Patricia sized her up quickly. She looked so young, too young to be a lead auditor. But Patricia had been in banking long enough to know that looks meant nothing when it came to federal officials. Young or old, they had the power to destroy careers. Good morning, Patricia said, extending her hand. I am Patricia Holloway, the branch manager. I understand you are here to conduct an audit? Her voice was friendly, but there was tension underneath, like a wire pulled too tight. Jasmine shook her hand firmly. Yes, ma'am. I am Jasmine Rodriguez, lead auditor from the Federal Banking Commission. This is a standard surprise audit. I will need full access to your records, your computer systems, and your staff. The audit will take approximately 1 week. 1 week. Patricia felt her stomach drop. A week was a long time, long enough to find anything and everything. She forced her smile to stay in place. Of course. We will cooperate fully. Can I see your credentials, please? Jasmine pulled out her badge and ID again. She also handed Patricia several official documents. Letters from the Federal Banking Commission. Legal forms that gave her authority to examine everything. Patricia read through them carefully. Everything looked legitimate. This was really happening. Would you like to use my office? Patricia asked. It was not really a question. She was trying to be helpful, trying to get on the auditor's good side. You can set up there. It is private and quiet. That would be fine, Jasmine said. She picked up her worn leather bag. But first, I need to observe the normal operations of the bank. I will walk around and watch how things work. Please tell your staff to continue as usual. I do not want anyone to change their behavior because I am here. Patricia nodded. But everyone was already watching. All the tellers had stopped working. The customers were whispering to each other. Sarah looked terrified. Tom kept wiping sweat from his forehead. And David just stood there like a statue, his face white as paper. Everyone, please continue with your work, Patricia announced loudly. This is a routine audit. Everything is fine. Just keep doing your jobs normally. Her voice was bright and cheerful, but nobody believed her. Nothing about this felt normal or fine. Jasmine walked slowly around the lobby. She carried a small notebook and wrote things down. She looked at the customer service area. She studied the teller windows. She watched how the staff interacted with customers. Her face showed nothing. No emotion, no judgment. Just careful observation. David tried to help the next customer in line, but his hands were shaking so badly he could barely type. He made 3 mistakes entering account numbers. The customer, an older man, noticed something was wrong. "Are you okay, son?" he asked. "You look sick." "I am fine," David lied. "Just a long morning." He finished the transaction and watched the man leave. Then he glanced over at Jasmine. She was standing near the loan officer's desk now, watching how applications were processed. What was she looking for? What had someone told her? Why were they being audited? Patricia went back to her office and closed the door. Her hands were shaking now, too. She picked up the phone and called corporate headquarters. She needed to tell them what was happening. They needed to send lawyers, maybe accountants. This was serious, the regional manager answered. Patricia explained the situation. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Then the manager spoke in a tight, angry voice. "A surprise audit? Why did they not tell us? Did they say what they were looking for?" "No," Patricia said. "The auditor said it was standard. But you and I both know that federal surprise audits are never standard. They think something is wrong here." "Do not let her intimidate you," the regional manager said. "Be cooperative, but do not volunteer information. Let her ask the questions. And for God's sake, make sure your staff does not say anything stupid." Patricia hung up the phone. She put her head in her hands. Her career was on the line. If the auditor found serious problems, Patricia would be blamed. She was the manager. She was responsible for everything. She thought about all the reports she had signed over the years. All the decisions she had approved. Had she missed something? Had she trusted the wrong people? Outside her office, Jasmine continued her observation. She sat in the waiting area and watched customers come and go. She noticed patterns. How long each customer waited. How the staff treated different people. She saw that some customers got immediate attention while others waited longer. She saw smiles for some and cold professionalism for others. One young couple came in around noon. They were Hispanic, probably in their late 20s. The man wore construction clothes. The woman wore a nursing uniform. They looked tired, like they had just come from work. They waited in line at David's counter. When they reached the front, David greeted them with his standard smile. "How can I help you?" "We want to apply for a home loan," the man said. His English was good but had an accent. "We have been saving money for 3 years. We found a small house we want to buy." David's smile faded just a little. "A home loan? Okay. Do you have your financial documents with you? Pay stubs? Tax returns? Bank statements?" "Yes, we have everything," the woman said. She pulled out a thick envelope full of papers. They had prepared carefully. David took the papers and looked through them quickly. Too quickly, Jasmine noticed. He barely read anything. "Your income is pretty low," David said. "And your credit score is only fair. I do not think you will qualify for our regular home loans. Those are for customers with excellent credit and higher income." The couple's faces fell. "But we have $20,000 saved," the man said. "We never miss payments on anything. We are good with money." "I understand," David said. His voice was sympathetic but firm. "But our lending standards are strict. Maybe you should try a different bank, or wait a few more years and save more money." He handed the envelope back to them. The couple took their papers and walked away. They looked defeated, disappointed. The woman's eyes were wet with tears. All that saving, all that hope. And they were turned away in 5 minutes. Jasmine wrote several things in her notebook. She had watched the entire interaction. David had not even filled out a proper application. He had not run their credit properly. He had not checked their debt-to-income ratio. He had just looked at them, made a quick judgment, and sent them away. That was not how lending was supposed to work. That was not following proper procedures. She thought about asking David about it right then. But she decided to wait. She wanted to see if this was a pattern. One incident might be a mistake, but multiple incidents would show something worse. Discrimination, bias, the kind of thing the Federal Banking Commission existed to stop. The afternoon continued. Jasmine watched more transactions. She saw David help a well-dressed white man who wanted a business loan. David spent 30 minutes with him, printed out forms, explained options, smiled and laughed at his jokes. The man's credit was probably not much better than the Hispanic couple's, but David treated him completely differently. By 4 o'clock, Jasmine had seen enough for day one. She went to Patricia's office and knocked on the door. Patricia looked up from her computer. She had been staring at reports all afternoon, trying to remember what might be wrong, trying to prepare for the questions that were coming. "I need to set up in here tomorrow," Jasmine said. "I will need access to your computer system. All loan applications from the past 2 years. Customer complaint files, employee records, training documentation, everything." Patricia nodded. Her mouth felt dry. "Of course. I will have IT set up a login for you. You will have complete access." "Good," Jasmine said. "I will be here at 8 o'clock tomorrow morning. Please inform your staff that I will be conducting interviews. I will want to speak with each teller privately." Interviews. That word made Patricia's heart race. What would her staff say? What secrets might come out? She had always trusted David. He had been here longer than anyone. He knew the business. But now she was wondering if she really knew him at all. Jasmine left the office and walked back through the lobby. All the tellers watched her go. David especially could not take his eyes off her. The young woman he had dismissed that morning now held his future in her hands. She walked out the front doors and disappeared into the parking lot. The moment she was gone, everyone started talking at once. "What was that about?" Sarah asked. "Are we in trouble?" "I do not know," David said. But that was a lie. He knew exactly what was happening. Someone had complained. Someone had reported the bank. And now a federal auditor was here to find proof. He thought about all the decisions he had made over the years, all the applications he had rejected. Jasmine arrived at Sterling Heights Bank at exactly 8 o'clock the next morning. She wore a different outfit today, navy blue pants and a white blouse, but she carried the same worn leather bag. David saw her walk through the front doors and felt his stomach turn. He had not slept much. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw that federal badge. He saw her calm, steady eyes watching him. Patricia was already waiting in her office. She looked tired too. Dark circles under her eyes showed she had spent most of the night worrying. "Good morning," she said when Jasmine knocked. "Everything is ready for you. IT set up your access last night. You can use my computer." "Thank you," Jasmine said. She sat down at Patricia's desk and logged into the system. Patricia stood nearby, not sure what to do. Should she stay? Should she leave? Jasmine made the decision for her. "You can go about your regular duties. I will call you if I need anything." Patricia left her own office feeling strange, like she was a guest in her own bank. She went to the break room and made coffee. Her hands shook as she poured. The other staff members arrived one by one. They all had the same worried looks on their faces. Nobody wanted to be here today. In the office, Jasmine started her work. She pulled up the loan application database. The system stored every loan request from the past 5 years. Home loans, car loans, business loans, personal loans. Everything was there. She started with the most recent applications and began working backward. The first thing she did was sort the data. She separated approved loans from rejected loans. Then she looked at the reasons for rejection. Low credit score, insufficient income, high debt. These were all legitimate reasons to deny a loan. But Jasmine looked deeper. She wanted to see patterns. She created a spreadsheet. On one side, she listed all the rejected applications. On the other side, she listed the approved ones. Then she added columns for race, gender, age, and income level. This was where the truth would show itself. If the bank was discriminating, the numbers would prove it. After 2 hours of work, a pattern started to emerge. Black and Hispanic applicants were rejected at much higher rates than white applicants, even when their credit scores were similar. Even when their incomes were comparable. The rejection rate for minority applicants was almost 60% higher. Jasmine leaned back in the chair. This was serious. Very serious. This was not just a few bad decisions. This was systematic discrimination. She looked at who had processed these applications. Many names appeared, but one name showed up more than any other: David Chen. He had personally rejected over 40 minority applicants in the past 2 years alone. She dug deeper into David's applications. She found one case that made her angry. A young black woman named Angela Thompson had applied for a business loan. She wanted to open a bakery. Her credit score was 710, which was good. She had a detailed business plan. She had $15,000 in savings to invest. David had rejected her application. His notes said she was too risky and lacked experience. 3 weeks later, a white man named Robert Patterson applied for a similar business loan. He wanted to open a restaurant. His credit score was 680, lower than Angela's. His business plan was only 5 pages long, much shorter than Angela's detailed proposal. He had $10,000 in savings, less than Angela. David approved his loan. His note said Robert showed entrepreneurial spirit and had good potential. Jasmine printed both applications and put them side by side. This was textbook discrimination. 2 similar applications, 2 different outcomes. The only real difference was the race of the applicants. A judge would see this in 5 seconds. A jury would not even need to debate. This was wrong, clearly, obviously wrong. She found more examples. A Hispanic couple denied a car loan even though they had stable jobs and good payment history. A young black man rejected for a personal loan despite having excellent credit. An Asian family told their income was too low for a home loan, even though it was above the minimum requirement. All processed by David, all rejected for questionable reasons. But it was not just David. Other tellers showed similar patterns, though not as extreme. Sarah had rejected several minority applicants. Tom had too. Even some of the loan officers showed bias in their decisions. The whole branch had a problem. The culture itself was toxic. Jasmine heard a knock on the door. It was Patricia. "How's everything going?" she asked nervously. "Do you need anything?" "I need to interview David Chen," Jasmine said. "Can you send him in, please?" Patricia's face went pale. "Right now?" "Yes, right now." Patricia walked out to the lobby. She found David at his counter helping a customer. She waited until he was finished, then pulled him aside. "The auditor wants to talk to you," she whispered. "In my office now." David felt like he might be sick. His legs were weak as he walked toward the office. He knocked on the door and Jasmine told him to come in. He sat down in the chair across from her. She had papers spread all over the desk. His papers, applications he had processed. He recognized some of the names. "Thank you for coming," Jasmine said. Her voice was professional, not friendly but not hostile either. "I have been reviewing loan applications that you processed. I need to ask you some questions." "Okay," David said. His voice came out as a whisper. Jasmine picked up the 2 applications. Angela Thompson and Robert Patterson. She placed them in front of David. "Can you explain why you rejected this application but approved this one?" David looked at the papers. He remembered both cases. His mind raced trying to think of a good answer. The woman did not have enough experience in business, he said. She had never run a company before. Neither had the man, Jasmine pointed out. According to his application, he worked as a sales manager. He never owned or operated a restaurant. Yet you approved his loan. He seemed more confident, David said. During the interview, he impressed me. You interviewed him? Jasmine asked. I do not see any interview notes in the file. But I also do not see any notes about interviewing Angela Thompson. Did you interview her? David realized he was trapped. I may have met with him briefly. I cannot remember exactly. Jasmine pulled out another application, the Hispanic couple who wanted a car loan. What about this one? You rejected them for insufficient income, but their combined income was $55,000 per year. That is above the minimum requirement of $50,000. Why did you reject them? They had other debts, David said. He was sweating now. Their debt-to-income ratio was too high. Jasmine looked at the file. Their debt-to-income ratio was 32%. Our policy allows up to 40%. So that is not a valid reason. She looked at him directly. So I will ask again. Why did you really reject them? David had no answer. His mouth opened, but no words came out. He stared at the papers on the desk. All the evidence of his decisions. All the proof of his bias. He had thought he was being a good banker, protecting the bank from risky loans. But seeing it all laid out like this, he could not deny what it looked like. What it was. I was just trying to do my job, he finally said. I was following my instincts. My experience. Your instincts, Jasmine repeated. Let me show you what your instincts look like in data form. She turned her laptop screen toward him. It showed a chart, the rejection rates by race. The numbers were clear and damning. Over the past 2 years, you rejected 68% of black applicants, 63% of Hispanic applicants, and only 31% of white applicants. How do you explain that? David looked at the chart. The numbers did not lie. He had rejected twice as many minority applicants as white applicants. He wanted to argue. He wanted to say the minorities had worse credit or lower incomes. But Jasmine had already controlled for that. She had compared similar applicants. The pattern remained. I never meant to discriminate, David said quietly. I never thought about race. I just looked at each application individually. Did you? Jasmine asked. Because the data says something different. The data says you made assumptions about people based on how they looked, based on their names, based on their backgrounds. Whether you meant to or not, you discriminated against protected classes of people. That is illegal. It violates federal law. It violates this bank's own policies. David felt tears starting to form in his eyes. His 15 years at this bank, his reputation, his career, everything was falling apart. What happens now? He asked. I am going to continue my investigation, Jasmine said. I will finish reviewing all the applications. I will interview other staff members. I will compile a full report. That report will go to the Federal Banking Commission. They will decide what actions to take. But I can tell you right now, this bank is in serious trouble, and you personally will face consequences. Can I keep working? David asked. Jasmine thought about it. That is up to Patricia and corporate. But if I were them, I would suspend you immediately. You are a liability to this bank. David stood up on shaky legs. He walked to the door, then turned back. For what it is worth, I am sorry. I really did not know I was doing anything wrong. Jasmine watched him leave. She had heard that before. Many people discriminated without realizing it. They thought they were being objective. But bias was subtle. It hid in quick judgments and gut feelings. It disguised itself as experience and common sense. But the victims of that bias felt it. They knew. She called Patricia back into the office. I need to recommend something, Jasmine said. David Chen should be suspended immediately pending the outcome of this investigation. He is a legal risk to your bank. Patricia nodded slowly. She had been expecting this. I will call corporate. They will make the final decision, but I agree with you. I also need to interview the other tellers, Jasmine said, and the loan officers. I want to understand how deep this problem goes. It is just David, though, right? Patricia asked hopefully. He is the only one with a problem? Jasmine shook her head. The data shows patterns across multiple employees. David is the worst, but he is not alone. Your entire branch needs retraining at minimum, and there may be other consequences. Patricia sat down heavily in her chair. This is going to destroy us. The bad publicity, the lawsuits, the fines. We might not recover from this. You might not, Jasmine agreed, but that is not my concern. My concern is the people who were hurt by this. The families who were denied loans they qualified for. The dreams that were crushed because someone made a snap judgment based on skin color. Those are the people I work for, not you. Not this bank, them. Patricia looked at the young woman sitting at her desk. She had underestimated her, just like David had. They had seen her age and her casual clothes and her old bag. They had not seen her intelligence, her dedication, her power. That had been their first mistake, and it would not be their last. The call came from corporate headquarters at 2 o'clock that afternoon. Patricia stood in the hallway with her cell phone pressed to her ear, listening to the regional director's angry voice. She could hear him perfectly. So could everyone else nearby. He was not trying to be quiet. How did this happen under your watch? He demanded. How did you not see this? You are the manager. You are supposed to know what your people are doing. Patricia closed her eyes. I trusted my staff. David has been here for 15 years. He knows banking better than anyone. I never thought to question his decisions. Well, you should have, the director snapped. The lawyers are already getting involved. Do you understand how much this is going to cost us? Not just in fines, but in lawsuits. Every person David rejected can now sue us. We are looking at millions of dollars in damages. What do you want me to do? Patricia asked. Suspend David immediately. Today. Right now. Do not let him touch another application. Do not let him talk to another customer. Get him out of that building. And pray to God that the auditor does not find anything worse. Patricia hung up the phone. Her hands were shaking. She had to fire David. Well, suspend him technically, but everyone knew what that meant. He would never work in banking again. His career was over. And probably hers too once this all came out. She found David at his counter. He was not helping customers. He was just sitting there staring at his computer screen. He looked like a man waiting for execution. "David," she said softly, "can you come to my office, please?" He followed her without a word. He knew what was coming. They sat down across from each other. Patricia had done this before, letting employees go. But never someone she had worked with for so long. Never someone she had considered a friend. "Corporate called," she said. "They are instructing me to suspend you immediately. You need to gather your personal belongings and leave the building. Security will escort you out," David nodded. He did not argue, did not protest. "Can I say goodbye to everyone?" "No," Patricia said. "I am sorry, but no. You need to leave quietly. Please give me your keys and your security badge." David reached into his pocket and pulled out his key ring. He had keys to the front doors, the safe, the supply room. He had a badge that let him in early and kept him late. He had carried these for 15 years. Now he placed them on the desk between them like he was surrendering. "I really am sorry," he said. "I know that does not help. But I need you to know that I never wanted to hurt anyone. I thought I was doing the right thing." "I know," Patricia said, but her voice was cold. She could not afford to be sympathetic, not now. But intentions do not matter when people get hurt. You hurt a lot of people, David. And now we all have to pay for it. 2 security guards appeared at the door. They were both men David had joked with 1,000 times. They had shared lunches, talked about sports. Now they would not look him in the eye. They just stood there waiting. David stood up. He walked out of Patricia's office for the last time. The lobby fell silent. Every teller stopped working. Every customer stopped talking. They all watched as David Chen, senior teller, walked through the bank with security guards on either side of him. He looked straight ahead. He did not look at Sarah or Tom or anyone else. He just walked. When he reached his desk, he opened the drawers and took out a few personal items. A photo of his wife, a coffee mug his kids had given him, a pen set from his 10th anniversary with the bank. Everything else he left behind. The guards gave him a cardboard box to put his things in. He carried the box toward the front doors. At the exit, he turned back one last time. He saw the bank he had worked at for 15 years. The polished floors, the marble counters, the gold letters on the wall. He had been so proud to work here, so proud of what he had accomplished. Now all he felt was shame. The doors closed behind him. The sound was final, like a cell door slamming shut. David walked to his car in the parking lot. He put the box in the trunk. Then he sat in the driver's seat and put his head on the steering wheel. For the first time in years, David Chen cried. Inside the bank, everyone started talking at once. "What is happening?" Sarah asked. "Is David really gone? Just like that?" "The auditor found something," Tom said. "Something bad. Really bad." Jasmine heard all of this from Patricia's office. She was still working through files, but she was aware of everything happening around her. She knew the other employees were scared. They were wondering if they were next. They were looking at their own decisions and wondering what the auditor would find. Over the next 2 days, Jasmine interviewed every employee. She started with Sarah. The young woman came into the office looking terrified. Her hands twisted in her lap as she sat down. "Am I in trouble?" Sarah asked immediately. "That depends," Jasmine said. "I need you to answer some questions honestly. I have been looking at loan applications you processed. I want to understand your decision-making process." She showed Sarah several files. Applications Sarah had rejected. Most were from minority applicants.
"Can you explain your reasoning on these?"
Sarah looked at the papers. Her face turned red. "I followed David's example," she said. "He trained me. He taught me what to look for. He said certain types of people were riskier than others. I thought I was learning from the best." "What types of people?" Jasmine asked. Sarah was quiet for a long moment. She knew how bad this would sound. Young people, minorities, people without white-collar jobs. David said banks lose money on those types of loans. He said we needed to be careful. "Did he ever say this in writing?" Jasmine asked. "In emails or training documents?" "No," Sarah said. "It was always verbal. In private conversations, he would pull me aside and say things like, 'This application looks risky even when the numbers looked fine.' I started to see patterns. I started to make the same judgments he did. Jasmine wrote all of this down. This was important. David had trained other employees to discriminate. He had passed on his biases to a new generation. The problem was deeper than just one person. She interviewed Tom next. He was older, in his 40s. He had worked at the bank for 7 years. His story was similar. He had learned from David. He had followed David's advice. He had made the same mistakes. I never questioned it. Tom admitted. David was the senior teller. He knew more than anyone. If he said an application was risky, I believed him. I trusted his judgment. Even when the numbers said otherwise, Jasmine asked. Even then, Tom said, I figured he saw something I did not. Something only experience could teach you. I did not realize he was teaching me to discriminate. By the end of day 4, Jasmine had interviewed 15 people. The picture was clear. David had been the source of the problem, but the problem had spread throughout the branch. Some employees knew what they were doing was wrong but did it anyway. Others honestly believed they were following proper procedures. Either way, the result was the same. Hundreds of people had been denied loans they deserved. Jasmine also looked at customer complaints. There were dozens of them. Most had been dismissed by Patricia as unreasonable or unfounded. But reading them now, in light of everything else, they told a clear story. One complaint was from a black woman who said David had been rude and dismissive. She said he barely looked at her application before rejecting it. Patricia's response in the file was, "Customer was upset about legitimate rejection. No further action needed." Another complaint was from a Hispanic man who said the bank's loan requirements seemed to change depending on who was applying. He knew white friends who got approved with worse credit than his. Patricia's response, "Customer is misinformed about lending criteria. Case closed." These complaints should have been red flags. They should have triggered reviews. Instead, they were ignored. Patricia had trusted her staff too much. She had not wanted to believe they could do anything wrong. That trust had been a mistake. On day 5, Jasmine called Patricia back into the office. "I need to have a difficult conversation with you," she said. Patricia sat down. She looked exhausted. She had barely slept in a week. "Am I being fired?" "That is not my decision," Jasmine said. "But I have to be honest with you. Your oversight of this branch was inadequate. You ignored warning signs. You dismissed legitimate complaints. You allowed discrimination to flourish under your management. That makes you responsible, even if you did not personally process the discriminatory applications." Patricia felt tears coming. She tried to hold them back but could not. "I did not know," she said. "I really did not know." "That is the problem," Jasmine said. "You should have known. It was your job to know. These complaints should have triggered investigations. David's rejection rates should have raised questions. But you saw what you wanted to see. A successful branch with good numbers. You did not look beneath the surface. What will happen to me?" Patricia asked. "The Federal Banking Commission will include you in their report," Jasmine said. "They will note that you failed to properly supervise your staff. Corporate will decide your fate. But I would not be surprised if you lose your position. You might lose your banking license." Patricia put her face in her hands. Her career was over, just like David's. All because she had been blind. All because she had trusted the wrong person and failed to ask the right questions. Jasmine felt no pleasure in this. She took no joy in destroying careers. But her job was not to protect feelings. Her job was to protect consumers, to enforce the law, to make sure banks treated people fairly. And Sterling Heights Bank had failed. Completely and totally failed. "There is one more thing," Jasmine said. "This is not just about your branch. I pulled data from other Sterling Heights locations. The pattern exists across the entire network. 12 branches total, all showing the same bias in lending. This is a systemic problem. It comes from the top." Patricia looked up. "From corporate?" "From the culture they created," Jasmine said. "From the emphasis on profits over people. From the lack of proper oversight and training. From leadership that did not make fairness and equality priorities. This audit is going to expand. It is going to involve the entire Sterling Heights organization. And when it is done, nothing will be the same." Patricia stood up slowly. She felt like she was 100 years old. "Thank you for telling me," she said. "At least now I know what is coming." She walked out of her office. The office that would not be hers much longer. She looked around the bank lobby. It still looked perfect. Polished and professional. But it was all a lie. Beneath the shiny surface, everything was rotten, and soon the whole world would know. On day 6, Jasmine requested a meeting with the entire Sterling Heights corporate leadership team. They arrived at the branch in expensive cars. 3 vice presidents, the regional director, the head of legal, the chief compliance officer. They all wore dark suits and serious expressions. They gathered in the conference room, a space usually reserved for quarterly meetings and employee celebrations. Jasmine stood at the front of the room with her laptop connected to a projector. On the screen behind her was a title slide. Sterling Heights Bank Audit, Preliminary Findings. The executives sat around the long table, their faces tense. They knew this would be bad. They just did not know how bad yet. "Thank you for coming," Jasmine began. "I have been conducting an audit of your Sterling Heights branch for the past 6 days. What I have found is deeply concerning. This is not an isolated incident. This is systematic discrimination that spans multiple years and multiple locations." She clicked to the next slide. It showed the rejection rate data broken down by race. The numbers were damning. The executive stared at the screen in silence. One of the vice presidents, a man named Robert Harrison, spoke first. "Are you sure this data is accurate?" "It seems extreme." "I have triple-checked everything," Jasmine said. "The data comes directly from your own systems. Your bank has been rejecting minority applicants at rates that are statistically impossible to explain by legitimate lending criteria alone. This is discrimination. Clear, measurable discrimination." She clicked through more slides. Examples of similar applications with different outcomes. Customer complaints that were ignored. Training materials that were inadequate. Policies that were not followed. With each slide, the executives looked more uncomfortable. The head of legal, a woman named Margaret Chen, leaned forward. "What kind of penalties are we looking at?" "That depends on the Federal Banking Commission," Jasmine said. "But I can tell you what similar cases have resulted in. Fines ranging from $5 to $50 million. Mandatory restitution to victims. Required changes to all lending practices. Federal monitoring for years. Loss of lending licenses in some cases. And that does not include the private lawsuits that will certainly follow. 50 million? Robert's face went pale. "That could bankrupt us." "Then you should have trained your employees better," Jasmine said. Her voice was calm but firm. "You should have monitored your lending patterns. You should have taken customer complaints seriously. You had many opportunities to catch this and fix it. You chose not to." The chief compliance officer, a nervous man named Peter Walsh, spoke up. "We have compliance training every year. All employees must complete it. We have policies against discrimination." Jasmine pulled up another slide. "Your compliance training is a 1-hour online course that employees can click through in 20 minutes. The final test has 5 questions, and you only need to get 3 right to pass. Most of the content is about technical regulations, not about recognizing and preventing bias, and your policies may exist on paper, but they are not enforced. I found 0 instances of employees being disciplined for discriminatory lending practices. 0. Peter had no response. The truth was obvious. The bank's compliance program was a joke. It existed to check boxes, not to actually prevent problems. Margaret, the legal head, spoke again. "What do you recommend we do to mitigate this?" "Mitigate?" Jasmine repeated. "You cannot mitigate discrimination. You can only admit it, take responsibility, and fix your system so it never happens again. Here is what I recommend. First, conduct a complete review of all loan applications from the past 5 years. Identify every person who was wrongly rejected. Reach out to them. Offer them the loans they should have gotten originally, at the interest rates that were available at the time. Compensate them for the harm caused by the delay." "That could be thousands of people," Robert said. "It is thousands of people," Jasmine confirmed. "I estimate approximately 2,000 applicants were affected across your 12 branches. Maybe more. You need to make this right." "What else?" Margaret asked, taking notes. "Second, fire everyone who knowingly participated in discrimination. That includes David Chen and potentially others. Third, provide real training to all remaining staff, not online modules. Real in-person training about implicit bias, fair lending, and civil rights. Make it mandatory. Make it meaningful." Jasmine clicked to her next slide. "Fourth, implement new oversight systems. Flag any applications that show unusual patterns. Review rejection rates monthly by race, gender, and age. Investigate anomalies immediately. Create a hotline where customers can report discrimination without fear of retaliation. And fifth, hire a diversity and inclusion officer who reports directly to the CEO. Give them real authority to make changes. The executives looked overwhelmed. One of the vice presidents, a woman named Linda Torres, had been quiet until now. This is going to cost tens of millions to implement. Maybe more. Our shareholders will never approve this. Then explain to your shareholders why breaking federal law was a good investment, Jasmine said. Explain to them why discriminating against customers made good business sense. I am sure they will understand. Linda fell silent. Everyone in the room knew the shareholders would be furious. Stock prices would drop. Heads would roll. Some of the people in this room might lose their jobs, but there was no way out now. The evidence was overwhelming. The meeting lasted 3 hours. Jasmine went through every detail of her findings. She answered their questions. She explained what the Federal Banking Commission would require. By the end, the executives looked defeated. This was their worst nightmare come true. As they filed out of the conference room, Margaret approached Jasmine. Can I ask you something off the record? If it is relevant to the investigation, nothing is off the record, Jasmine said. Margaret nodded. Fair enough. I just wanted to say that I appreciate your thoroughness. I know this is your job, but you clearly care about getting it right. A lot of auditors would have just filed a basic report and moved on. You dug deeper. This is not just paperwork to me, Jasmine said. Every rejected application represents a real person. A family that could not buy a home. An entrepreneur who could not start a business. A student who could not buy a car to get to work. These are real consequences. Real pain. So yes, I dig deeper. Because they deserve someone who cares. Margaret looked at her for a long moment. How old are you, if you do not mind me asking? 27, Jasmine said. You are young to be a lead auditor. I worked hard to get here, Jasmine said. I graduated top of my class. I passed my certifications on the first try. I have conducted 32 audits in 5 years. I am good at my job because I have to be. People like me do not get second chances. We have to be twice as good to get half the credit. Margaret understood what she meant. Jasmine was a young black woman in a field dominated by older white men. She had faced discrimination herself. That was probably why she was so passionate about stopping it. For what it is worth, Margaret said, I am glad you are the one doing this audit. If this had to come out better, it comes from someone who will do it right. After the executives left, Jasmine returned to Patricia's office. She had one more day of work to complete her report. She spent that evening organizing all her findings into a comprehensive document. Page after page of evidence, charts, graphs, examples, legal citations. Everything the Federal Banking Commission would need to take action. Around 8 o'clock, as the bank was dark and empty, Patricia came back. She had forgotten some files she needed to take home. She saw the light on in her office and found Jasmine still working. You are here late, Patricia said. Almost done, Jasmine replied. I will finish the report tomorrow and submit it by end of business. Patricia leaned against the doorframe. She looked tired, broken. Can I ask you something? What? Do you think I am a bad person? Jasmine stopped typing. She thought about the question. No, she said finally. I think you are a person who made bad decisions, who trusted the wrong people and did not ask enough questions. That does not make you evil. It makes you human. But being human does not excuse the harm that was caused. I really did not know, Patricia said. About David, about the discrimination. I thought everything was fine. I believe you, Jasmine said. But as a manager, not knowing is not acceptable. It was your responsibility to know. Your job to check. Your duty to protect both the bank and its customers. You failed at that. Not because you are a bad person, but because you were not vigilant enough. Patricia nodded slowly. I am probably going to lose my job. Probably, Jasmine agreed. There was no point in lying. What should I do? How do I fix this? You cannot fix it, Jasmine said. But you can learn from it. If you work in banking again, be better. Pay attention. Listen to complaints. Question your assumptions. Do not let loyalty to employees blind you to their mistakes. And maybe eventually, you can help create the kind of workplace that does not allow discrimination to happen. Will you mention that in your report? Patricia asked. That I cooperated? That I am sorry? I will note that you provided full access to all records and cooperated with the investigation, Jasmine said. But whether you are sorry is not relevant to my report. My report is about facts. What happened? Who did it? What the consequences should be. Your feelings are between you and your conscience. Patricia left without another word. Jasmine watched her go. She did not hate Patricia. She did not even dislike her. Patricia was just another person who had failed to do the right thing when it mattered. The world was full of people like that. Jasmine worked until midnight finishing the last sections of her report. When she was done, she had a document over 200 pages long. It contained everything, all the evidence, all the interviews, all the recommendations. This report would change Sterling Heights Bank forever. Before she left for the night, she thought about all the people affected by this. The thousands of applicants who had been rejected unfairly. Some had probably given up on their dreams. Some had gone to other banks and succeeded. Some had suffered setbacks they never recovered from. They would never know that one person's bias had changed the course of their lives. But now, because of this audit, they might get a second chance. They might get the loans they deserved. They might get compensation for the harm they suffered. It would not erase the past. It would not give back the time they lost. But it was something. It was justice, even if it came late. Jasmine packed up her worn leather bag and turned off the lights. Tomorrow she would submit her report, and then this case would be out of her hands. The Federal Banking Commission would take over. Lawyers would get involved. The media would probably find out. Sterling Heights Bank would face a reckoning it could not escape. As she walked out of the empty bank, Jasmine thought about David. Where was he now? What was he thinking? Did he understand what he had done? Did he regret it? She would probably never know. Her job was to find the truth and report it. What happened to the people afterward was not her concern, but sometimes late at night she wondered. She wondered if people like David ever really changed, if they ever understood the harm they caused, or if they just saw themselves as victims punished for doing what everyone else did. She hoped David learned something. She hoped he became a better person. But hope and reality were often two different things, and in her experience, people rarely changed unless they had no other choice. 3 months had passed since Jasmine submitted her report to the Federal Banking Commission. The investigation had expanded far beyond the original branch. Teams of auditors descended on all 12 Sterling Heights Bank locations. They interviewed hundreds of employees. They reviewed thousands of loan applications, and they found exactly what Jasmine had predicted. The discrimination was everywhere. The story broke in the newspapers on a cold Tuesday morning. The headline read, "Sterling Heights Bank faces federal investigation for systematic discrimination." Within hours, it was on every news channel. Television reporters stood outside bank branches interviewing angry customers. Social media exploded with stories from people who had been rejected for loans they deserved. David saw the news from his apartment. He had not left the house much in 3 months. He had applied for jobs at other banks, but once they learned about his suspension, no one would hire him. He tried retail. He tried customer service. But word had spread in the banking community. Everyone knew what he had done. His reputation was destroyed. His wife sat next to him on the couch as they watched the news. "I cannot believe this is happening," she said. "They are making you sound like a monster." "Maybe I am," David said quietly. He had spent 3 months thinking about his actions. At first, he had been angry. He told himself the audit was unfair, that he was being made a scapegoat, that everyone in banking made the same judgments he did. But as the weeks passed, the anger faded, and underneath he found something worse. Shame. He thought about the Hispanic couple he had turned away, the young black woman whose business loan he rejected, all the people he had judged in 5 seconds based on how they looked. He told himself it was just good banking, just protecting the bank's interests. But the truth was simpler and uglier. He had been prejudiced. He had discriminated. And he had hurt people. On the television, a reporter interviewed a black man named James Porter. "I applied for a car loan at Sterling Heights 3 times, James said. Each time they rejected me. They said my credit was not good enough. But my credit score was 720. I had no debt. I had a steady job. Finally, I went to a different bank and got approved in 10 minutes. Sterling Heights wasted a year of my life. David recognized the name. He had processed one of those applications. He remembered James. He remembered thinking the man looked unreliable. But why? What had made David think that? James wore regular clothes. He spoke clearly. His application was strong. The only thing different about him was his skin color. And that should not have mattered. But it did. To David, it had mattered. Across town, Patricia Holloway was cleaning out her office at Sterling Heights Bank. Corporate had given her 2 weeks' notice. They were letting her go with a severance package, but she was done in banking. Her license was under review. Even if she kept it, no bank would hire her. She was tainted by the scandal. She boxed up her files and personal items, photos of her kids, awards from her years in management, a plaque that said Branch Manager of the Year from 5 years ago. It all seemed meaningless now. She had been so proud of her career. She thought she was running a successful branch. But success built on discrimination was not success at all. It was a lie. Sarah and Tom still worked at the bank, but things had changed. They had to go through weeks of intensive training, classes on implicit bias, workshops on fair lending, seminars on civil rights law. At first, Sarah had been resentful. She thought it was all political correctness gone too far. But gradually, something shifted in her mind. One day in training, the instructor showed them a video. It was interviews with people who had been discriminated against. Real customers from Sterling Heights Bank. They talked about how rejection made them feel. The shame, the anger, the sense that no matter how hard they worked, they would never be good enough in some people's eyes. Sarah saw herself in those rejection stories. She remembered following David's example, making quick judgments, assuming things about people. And she realized she had hurt people, real people with families and dreams and hopes, people who deserved better than the treatment she gave them. She raised her hand during the training. "Can we contact the people we rejected?" "To apologize?" The instructor looked surprised. "The bank will be reaching out to affected customers as part of the settlement. But personal apologies are up to you. Just know that some people may not want to hear from you. You have to respect that." After the training session, Sarah looked up some of the applications she had rejected. She found one from a young woman named Maria Santos. Maria had applied for a small business loan to open a cleaning company. Her credit was decent. Her business plan was solid. But Sarah had rejected her, noting that she seemed inexperienced and risky. Sarah found Maria's phone number in the file. She sat at her desk for 10 minutes staring at her phone. Finally, she dialed. Maria answered on the third ring. "Hello? Hi, my name is Sarah. I work at Sterling Heights Bank. I processed your loan application 2 years ago. The one for your cleaning business." There was a long pause. "I remember," Maria said. Her voice was cold. "I called to apologize," Sarah said. "I rejected your application for the wrong reasons. I did not give you a fair chance, and I am sorry. What I did was wrong." Another pause. "Why are you calling me now?" "Because you got caught." "Yes," Sarah admitted. "Because we got caught. Because I finally understand what I did. I know my apology does not fix anything. I know it does not give you back the time you lost. But I needed to say it anyway. You deserved better, and I'm sorry I did not give it to you." Maria was quiet for a moment. "I went to a different bank. I got my loan. My cleaning business has 15 employees now. I did not need Sterling Heights." "I did not need you. I am glad," Sarah said. "I am glad you succeeded despite what I did." "You deserve that success, is that all?" Maria asked. "Yes, I just wanted you to know that I know I was wrong, and I am sorry." Maria hung up without saying goodbye. Sarah put down her phone. She felt terrible, but also, strangely, a little bit better. She had taken responsibility. She had admitted her mistake to the person she hurt. It did not erase what happened, but it was a start. Meanwhile, the Federal Banking Commission moved forward with its case against Sterling Heights Bank. The penalties were announced in a public hearing. $43 million in fines, mandatory restitution to over 2,000 affected customers, 3 years of federal oversight, required changes to all lending practices and training programs, and several high-level executives were forced to resign. The CEO of Sterling Heights, a man named Richard Crane, held a press conference. He stood at a podium looking uncomfortable as cameras flashed. "Sterling Heights Bank deeply regrets the discriminatory practices that occurred in some of our branches. We failed our customers and our communities. We take full responsibility and we are committed to making this right. Reporters shouted questions. Will you personally apologize to the victims? One asked. We are reaching out to every affected customer individually, Richard said. We will offer them the loans they should have received at the original interest rates. We will compensate them for any harm caused by our delays, and we will work tirelessly to rebuild the trust we lost. What about the employees who caused this? Another reporter demanded.
Will they face criminal charges?
That is up to federal prosecutors, Richard said. Our focus is on fixing our systems and serving our customers better moving forward. In her small apartment, Jasmine watched the press conference on her laptop. She had moved on to another assignment, another bank in another city, but she followed the Sterling Heights case closely. This was her biggest investigation, the one that would define her career. She felt satisfaction seeing the penalties announced. $43 million would hurt Sterling Heights. It would force them to change. And the 2,000 customers receiving restitution would get a measure of justice. It was not perfect. Justice never was. But it was something. Her phone rang. It was her supervisor at the Federal Banking Commission. I just wanted to congratulate you, he said. The Sterling Heights case is being held up as a model investigation. Thorough, well-documented, undeniable. You did excellent work. Thank you, Jasmine said. I just followed the evidence. You did more than that. You made sure every detail was airtight. Their lawyers tried to fight it, but they could not. Your report was too strong. You should be proud. After she hung up, Jasmine thought about pride. She was proud of her work. Proud that she had held a corrupt institution accountable. But she also felt sadness. Sadness that the discrimination had happened in the first place. Sadness for all the people whose lives had been disrupted by someone else's bias. She thought about David Chen. She had read that he lost his banking license permanently. He would never work in finance again. Part of her felt sorry for him. He had not been trying to be evil. He had just been blind to his own prejudices. But another part of her felt no sympathy at all. Ignorance was not an excuse. Good intentions were not an excuse. He had power over people's lives and he used it carelessly. He deserved what he got. Back in his apartment, David was thinking about the same thing. He had been offered a job as a delivery driver. It paid a fraction of what he made at the bank. It had no prestige, no respect. But it was honest work and he needed money. He took the job. His first day, he delivered packages to a nice neighborhood. One of the houses belonged to a black family. A young woman answered the door. She looked professional, like she worked in an office. David handed her the package and turned to leave. Wait, she said. Do I know you? You look familiar. David froze. Did she recognize him from the news? From the bank? He wanted to run, but he forced himself to stay calm. I do not think so, he said. The woman studied his face. No, I guess not. You just look like someone I used to know. Have a good day. David walked back to his truck. His heart was pounding. That would be his life now, always wondering if people recognized him, always carrying the shame of what he had done. He had thought losing his job was the punishment. But the real punishment was having to live with himself, having to know what kind of person he had been, what kind of person he might still be deep down. That night, David sat at his kitchen table with a notebook. He started writing down names, every person he could remember rejecting, every application he dismissed without proper review. He could not remember everyone. Some faces blurred together, but he remembered many of them, and next to each name he wrote an apology, not to send to them, just for himself, to acknowledge what he had done. It took him 4 hours to fill 10 pages. 10 pages of people he had failed, people he had judged, people he had hurt. Looking at all those names, David finally understood the scope of his actions. It was not just abstract numbers in a report. These were real human beings, and he had made their lives harder for no good reason. He did not know if he would ever forgive himself. He did not know if he deserved forgiveness. But he knew one thing. He could never be that person again. He could never make quick judgments based on appearance. He could never let his assumptions hurt someone. It was the only way forward, the only way to live with what he had done. 6 months had passed since the Federal Banking Commission announced its findings. Sterling Heights Bank was struggling but slowly rebuilding. They had hired a new diversity officer, A woman named Dr. Sharon Williams. She was a former civil rights attorney with a reputation for not accepting excuses. She reported directly to the CEO and had authority to make real changes. Dr. Williams implemented new systems across all 12 branches. Every loan application was now reviewed by at least 2 people. Computer algorithms flagged any unusual patterns in approvals or rejections. Monthly reports tracked lending data by race, gender, and age. Any branch that showed bias was immediately investigated. The changes were expensive and time-consuming, but they were necessary. The bank also reached out to the 2,000 customers affected by discrimination. Each person received a personal letter apologizing for the harm caused. The letter included an offer to reconsider their loan application with no fees, at the interest rates that were available when they originally applied. If they had already obtained loans elsewhere, they received financial compensation for the delay and inconvenience. Some people accepted. Others were too angry and hurt to respond. A few filed lawsuits anyway, seeking additional damages. Sterling Heights paid out millions in settlements, hoping to avoid lengthy court battles. The company's stock price had dropped 30%. Several investors sold their shares. It would take years for the bank to fully recover its reputation. One sunny afternoon, Angela Thompson received a letter from Sterling Heights Bank. She almost threw it away without opening it. She remembered applying for a business loan years ago. She remembered being rejected by a man who barely looked at her paperwork. She remembered the humiliation of being told her dream was too risky, but curiosity got the better of her. She opened the envelope and read the letter. It apologized for the discriminatory treatment she received. It offered her a business loan of $50,000 at 3.5% interest, the rate from 3 years ago when she originally applied. It also included a check for $5,000 as compensation. Angela sat down stunned. She had opened her bakery anyway, using a loan from a credit union. She had struggled those first 2 years, paying higher interest rates because she had to wait so long, but now her business was successful. She had 3 locations and 20 employees. She did not need Sterling Heights anymore. Still, the apology meant something. The money meant something. It acknowledged that she had been wronged, that what happened to her was not her fault, that she had been right all along. The man at the bank had been biased. He had judged her unfairly, and now finally someone was admitting it. She deposited the check and donated it to a non-profit that helped minority entrepreneurs get business loans. The money could help someone else the way no one had helped her. It felt like the right thing to do. Across the country, Jasmine Rodriguez was preparing for her next assignment. She sat in a coffee shop with her worn leather bag beside her. Her laptop was open, showing files for a bank in Chicago that showed suspicious lending patterns. Another audit. Another investigation. Another chance to hold people accountable. Her phone buzzed. It was an email from someone named Angela Thompson. The subject line said, "Thank you." Jasmine opened it, curious. "Dear Ms. Rodriguez," it read. "I was one of the people affected by discrimination at Sterling Heights Bank. I received their letter and compensation today. I wanted to reach out to thank you. I know you were the auditor who uncovered what was happening. You probably do not remember my application, but I do. I was rejected for a business loan I deserved. It delayed my dream by 2 years. I eventually succeeded anyway, but those 2 years were hard. Knowing that someone cared enough to investigate, to dig through all those files and find the truth means more to me than I can say. Thank you for doing what you do. Thank you for fighting for people like me. You made a difference in my life even though we have never met." Jasmine read the email twice. She did remember Angela's application. It was one of the examples she had highlighted in her report. She had compared it to the white man with weaker credentials who got approved. That comparison had been powerful evidence of discrimination. She typed a response. "Dear Angela, thank you for your email. I am glad you received the compensation you deserved. I am even more glad that you succeeded despite the obstacles placed in your path. That success is all yours. You earned it. I just did my job. But knowing it mattered to someone makes my job worth doing. I wish you continued success with your business." She hit send and closed her laptop. Emails like that reminded her why she did this work. It was not about punishing banks or destroying careers. It was about helping people like Angela. People who worked hard and played by the rules but got rejected because someone made unfair assumptions about them. Meanwhile, David Chen was living a very different life. He worked as a delivery driver during the day. In the evenings, he volunteered at a community center that helped immigrants learn English and navigate American systems. He helped people fill out job applications. He explained how banking worked. He taught them to spot scams and predatory lenders. One evening, a young Hispanic woman came to the center. She wanted help understanding why her loan application had been rejected. David looked at her paperwork. Her credit was decent. Her income was steady. The rejection letter said she did not meet the bank's standards, but it did not explain why. "This looks like discrimination to me," David said. "Your application is strong. There is no good reason to reject you." The woman looked surprised. "How do you know about discrimination?" David hesitated. He had not told anyone at the center about his past. But maybe it was time. "Because I used to work at a bank," he said. "And I discriminated against people just like you. I made unfair judgments. I rejected good applications for bad reasons. I was wrong, and I hurt a lot of people." The woman stared at him. "You did that?" "Yes," David said. "I did not think I was being discriminatory. I thought I was just doing my job. But I was wrong. And I lost everything because of it, my career, my reputation, everything. I deserved it." "So why are you helping me now?" she asked. "Because I cannot undo what I did," David said. "But I can try to be better going forward. I can help people fight against the same discrimination I used to cause. It does not make up for what I did." "Nothing can, but it is something." The woman nodded slowly. "Okay, so what do I do about this rejection?" "You file a complaint with the bank. You also file a complaint with the Federal Banking Commission. I will help you write them. And if they do not fix it, we find you a different bank, a better bank, one that will treat you fairly." Over the next hour, David helped her draft both complaints. As they worked, he thought about how much he had changed. 6 months ago, he would have been the person rejecting her. Now he was helping her fight back. It felt strange, uncomfortable, but also right. When the woman left, David sat alone in the community center. He thought about Jasmine Rodriguez, the young auditor who had exposed him. He had resented her at first, blamed her for ruining his life. But she had not ruined anything. She had just revealed the truth. David had ruined his own life by his actions, by his bias, by his failure to see people as individuals instead of stereotypes. He wondered if Jasmine knew about his volunteer work. Probably not. She had moved on to other cases, other banks, other investigations. She was not thinking about him, and that was fine. He was not doing this for recognition. He was doing it because it was the only way he could live with himself. Back at Sterling Heights Bank, the transformation continued. Dr. Williams had fired 3 more employees who showed patterns of discrimination. She had completely rewritten the training program. New hires now went through 2 weeks of intensive education before they were allowed to process a single application. Existing employees were retrained every quarter. The culture was changing slowly but surely. Tellers who used to make quick judgments now took time with every customer. They asked questions. They reviewed documents carefully. They followed the rules. Not because they were afraid of being caught, but because they had learned to see customers as human beings, not as categories or risks. Sarah had become one of the strongest advocates for change. She volunteered to speak at training sessions, sharing her own story of how she had discriminated without realizing it. She talked about the shame she felt when she understood what she had done. And she challenged other employees to examine their own biases. "We all have prejudices," she told a room full of new tellers. "That is just human nature. But we cannot let those prejudices affect our decisions. Every application deserves fair treatment. Every customer deserves respect. It does not matter what they look like. It does not matter where they come from. What matters is the numbers, the qualifications, the facts. If we stick to that, we cannot go wrong." Tom had also changed. He left banking entirely and became a teacher. He taught financial literacy at a high school in a low-income neighborhood. Most of his students were Black and Hispanic. He taught them about credit scores, budgeting, and how to apply for loans. He warned them about discrimination and taught them how to recognize it and fight it. One day, a student asked him why he cared so much. Tom told them the truth. "Because I used to work at a bank, and I discriminated against people who looked just like you. I denied loans to people who deserved them. I hurt families and destroyed dreams. I cannot take that back. But I can make sure you all know your rights. I can make sure you never let someone like me hold you back." The students respected his honesty. They worked harder in his class because they knew he genuinely wanted them to succeed. He was not just teaching. He was trying to atone. Patricia Holloway never worked in banking again. She took a job as an office manager at a small nonprofit. The pay was much lower than what she was used to, but the work was meaningful. The nonprofit helped victims of housing discrimination find lawyers and file complaints. Patricia helped organize their cases and track their progress. She often thought about her years at Sterling Heights, about how she had failed to see what was happening right in front of her, about how her lack of vigilance had allowed discrimination to flourish. She could not change the past, but she could help make sure it did not happen to others. One afternoon, she helped a young black man named Terrence who had been denied a mortgage despite having excellent credit. They filed a formal complaint together. A month later, the bank reversed its decision and approved his loan. Terrence called to thank her, his voice full of joy. "I am buying a house. My family is getting a home." Patricia felt tears in her eyes. This was redemption, even if only a small piece of it. She could not undo the harm she had allowed at Sterling Heights. But she could fight for people like Terrence, one case at a time, one victory at a time. As the sun set on another day, Jasmine Rodriguez boarded a plane to Chicago. Another bank, another audit, another fight for justice. She carried her worn leather bag onto the plane and found her seat. She pulled out her laptop and reviewed her notes. This was her life. Flying from city to city, investigating banks, finding discrimination, holding people accountable. It was exhausting work. It was often thankless, but it mattered. It changed lives, and that was enough. She thought about Sterling Heights, about David and Patricia, and all the others whose lives had been changed by her investigation. She hoped they had learned something. She hoped they were better people now, but she also knew that hope was not enough. Real change required constant vigilance, constant effort, constant willingness to confront uncomfortable truths. The plane took off and Jasmine looked out the window. Below her, the city lights twinkled in the darkness. Millions of people going about their lives, some of them facing discrimination, some of them being denied opportunities they deserved, some of them needing someone to stand up for them. And Jasmine would be there. Maybe not for all of them. Maybe not in time for everyone. But for as many as she could reach. For as long as she had the strength to fight. Because that was what justice required. Not perfection. Just persistence. One audit at a time. One investigation at a time. One person at a time. The flight attendant came by offering drinks. Jasmine ordered water and returned to her laptop. She had work to do. The next bank was waiting. The next case was calling, and she would answer. Because somewhere in Chicago, someone was being discriminated against right now. Someone whose application would be rejected for the wrong reasons. Someone who deserved better. And when Jasmine found them, when she uncovered the truth, that person would get justice. Maybe it would come late. Maybe it would not fix everything. But it would come. Because Jasmine Rodriguez did not give up. She did not look away. And she did not accept excuses. She was 27 years old. She carried a worn leather bag and a federal badge. And she was one of the most powerful forces for justice in the American banking system. Not because she was trying to be, but because someone had to be. And she had chosen to answer that call. The plane leveled off at cruising altitude. Jasmine closed her laptop and closed her eyes. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. New discoveries. New battles. But tonight she allowed herself a moment of peace. She had done good work at Sterling Heights. She had made a difference, and that was worth everything.